Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be discussing how to do long bows, and we are also going to be covering Monday's Melody and how to play that, and some different strategies of teaching a beginner, or if you are a beginner, on how to play Monday's Melody. So let's go ahead and start right out with long bowing. So we're going to take our violin, stop the traffic, we're going to go up, to scroll up and over, and shoot, bring it right up down in. Always good to keep these habits and to establish them even early on, especially if you're teaching. So let's go ahead and let's get the nice bow hold going right there. Make sure our bow hold is good before we start in. So when we're doing long bows, this is something that a lot of students will struggle with, and mainly because, especially for the beginner students, it's going to be a new motion for most of them. It's not necessarily something they're going to have practiced a whole lot in and of itself. So it may take some time, but some things to know about long bowing is, one is that it's going to require the motion of the whole arm, and the arm motion needs to be free. You don't want to have the motion locked up, otherwise you're going to cause problems that's going to lead to tension and possible muscle damage down the road, and that is what we want to avoid when playing the violin. So, several positions to know. One is, this is the L position right here, when everything, the elbow right here is locked tight. I'm going to just set the violin down here actually. The elbow is up here, so let's say up on the shoulder, there's the L position, that's 90 degrees. The V position is going to be up at the top. Now my elbow has come more towards center in the body, and you can see my elbow and arm are making, shoulder and arm are meeting at the elbow there and making a V shape. The other one to know is the I, and that is going to be straight out. So when you come down, something like that, and you can see your arm is going to be straight. So when you're coming up, there's the V, come through the L, and down to the I position. And it's fine to rotate the shoulder over as needed here to come down. So V, L, I, L, V. Those are the three basic, those are the three basic positions. And when using a long bow, generally speaking, you're going to use all three, go through all three of those positions. That way you have more, you're using the full length of the bow. Another thing that is good to know when doing long bows is the speed in which you come down. It has a lot to do with it. So if you have, let's say you have two whole notes that are tied together, so 8 beats that you want to be playing, if you slow down the speed of your bow coming across the string, that's going to allow for a lot more time and to be able to use that bow. Whereas if you speed right down through it, even with the full motion, it's going to be shorter. So that's just something to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and let's pick up our violin again using proper technique. Bring it down. So let's just go ahead and we're going to play on the open A string. So right here's my L position. So for a long bow, let's go up to the V, start up high. Again, make sure that there's not tension, and as a teacher, if you see tension here, this is where you want to possibly just stop the student or the class and explain to them that tension, it should be free, and that there should not be tension occurring in the arm motion. Everything should just be nice and free. And then let's just play this on open. So up here in my V position. As I just did there, you may see that is something that will occasionally or frequently occur with beginners. It's going to take some practice as they get that new motion. However, you just want to keep it nice and smooth and the arm continuously flowing. Eventually you want your students to be able to have this flowing motion that just creates, that's part of the beauty of the violin, is these long passages on legato, these longer passages where the violin will just use the full length of the bow and a well-experienced violinist will know how to do those masterfully using longbows. So longbows are something you want to master if you hope to be able to play proficiently someday. So let's go ahead and now another thing to keep in mind is you can, depending on what's going on, if you have a legato passage, you will probably just want to continue to play and moving the fingers. So let's say I'm playing on my string. So. Now that was not the best example, but I think you can get the idea. Just play, you can play your notes as you continue down. That will take some practice. So I would encourage to have students to, or if you are a beginner watching, just practice just doing the longbow motion for a while until you attempt adding notes. Another thing, the longbow generally speaking is going to just be one continuous motion, and you're not going to have breaks because that defeats the purpose of the longbow. So that in a nutshell is the longbow. So let's continue moving on, and now let's go ahead into playing Monday's Melody. So Monday's Melody is a little more challenging of a piece. For one, it is C major scale and not D major, which is typically a little easier, so we're working with the C major scale. So not that much difference. The only difference is when playing, we have the C right there. The C on this top string here, and that is going to be played just, you can, generally speaking, you'll want to play it with your third finger here, again using violin finger terminology. So third finger right here, and that simply because you want to, if you have your first finger here, you're going to have to shift over and a couple notes back to on the D on the C string. Excuse me, I was playing the D there, not the C. So it's going to be the third position up. So here's first position, second, third position. Going to be using the third finger on that top string. Then you'll be playing the open D, and then it's just going to be pretty much standard fingering. However, when you get to this D, E, now we have F instead of F sharp. For a D major scale, remember this is in the key of C major, so we're going to have F natural. We still have G and A and then C as well in this piece. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. This piece is going to be a little trickier, so we're going to break it down and have a couple different techniques. But let's go ahead and let's start out. And this also depends on what you want to do, but if you as a student or a teacher desire to have more of a challenge, to give more of a challenge, if as a teacher you would like to challenge your students a little more, or if as a beginner you want to take a challenge, go ahead and try to play this through the first time. Just go ahead, you can try to just read through it, not really caring about mistakes and notes, just getting a feel for what it's like, and then solving problem areas. Another strategy you can implement is just taking it in bite-sized pieces, which is the one I'm going to use today, simply because it's much easier to do in that way. So let's go ahead and let's start out with the first measure. First measure is actually implementing using part of the bows, because if you see there are these slur markings, those are important. So that is not two separate bow marks, that's one bow and then just play it on open. So for example, sorry, let me get my notes here. Let's try that one more time. Okay, so open A. So So that's the first two measures, and that refrain is going to come back. Da 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 da. That sequence is going to come back several times in the piece. So I would encourage you to just master that spot. If you master that spot, you probably have about roughly a third to half of the song done already. So the trickiest part is these slurs. So let's go ahead and let's slow those down. That first one especially is a little tricky because you're going from the C string here and then bowing down, but continuing the same motion. So it shouldn't be. It should be. So. So that first part is a little bit tricky. This song is a little more difficult. So this is going to be more of an intermediate beginner song, I would say. Personally, I am not very far along myself, so this would be a little more challenging of a piece even for myself. But we're going to continue. Let's go ahead and let's continue on. So let's replay those first two measures. Once you've mastered those first two measures, then you can continue on the next two. So I'm just going to play that one more time. Now we're going to go to the next two measures. Measure 4, it is important to note that E is not slurred together. So this time is bum, bum, bum. So E, E, D. Then we're going back to this slurring. This piece is really focusing on using that slurring motion, which is a more difficult technique to master. So measure 4, that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then 5 and 6 repeat are the same thing of 1 and 2, and really you could say measure 7 and 8 are unique. So let's go ahead and let's get on this measure 7 and 8 then. So So there, the slur pops in again. So da dum dum. So the D and E should be on one bow. Now switching that bow, or you can continue down. So let's see if I can get that all together. Let's go ahead, and then that is the first big part of it. Then the next part just goes to the high C. So let's go ahead and let's play up to where we've got so far. D can be a use of the long bow right there, just coming down, especially if used faster. You can use the whole length of the bow and then coming back up. So So that is a tricky first part. This part is tricky, this song. Now let's continue on the second part here with the high Cs. And coming right back to it. Now right back to the beginning. Up there. That would be a rough run through of Monday's Melody. So when you're working on that, you just want to continue to tackle the difficult parts, specifically the slurring on the first measure. That is probably the most difficult technique that is used in this piece. And in measure 2, you can also using the long bows. So this piece really does have a lot of different parts working together. You have the different notes, you have eighth notes, you have your quarter notes, you have your half notes. You also have your slurring occurring. Nice rhyme there, by the way. You also have the different higher frequencies. You have the C major scale all going into this. So this piece really would be a culmination of a lot of techniques you've already been teaching or learning as if you're a student. So I know the demonstration wasn't perhaps the best, but I hope the techniques and strategies made sense, and I hope you were able to learn something. And I hope this tutorial has been very helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment and ask and let me know. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. We'll be back. Thanks so much.